Hello, everybody.
It's Friday night, guys, and here we are once again. It's time for Friday Night Live. Friday Night Live.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's an interesting week.
Yep.
Craziness, right? It's been
Yeah.
quite the quite the week, quite the year,
Yeah.
quite the month, and it looks like we're going into a time when everybody, of course, is wondering, like, where do we go from here? What do you think?
Where do you go?
I don't know, Kerry.
I don't know. What do you think?
What do I think?
Yeah.
It's an interesting time, that's what I think. What do you guys think? We gotta ask the people out there what do they think. Because we are live, of course, and your questions are much appreciated. Because the world is a changing place, and obviously, we are going to stray far away from the whole political stuff. This isn't going to be political. It's about what's going to happen from here. Where are we going to go from this point forward in terms of real estate? As far as markets are concerned, everybody paying attention to today's stock market.
Yep.
It's soaring.
Yeah. That's
Everything, the stock market really is really just shot up quite a bit. Interest rates came down quite a bit. Interest rates, because the 10-year Treasury dropped quite a bit. The Fed, in all this nonsense, and all this craziness, has basically lowered everything 0.5% in terms of the Fed fund rate. So rates haven't, for one reason or another, have not dropped, even with the last Fed rate hike, Fed drop of a whole 0.5 point. So the Fed fund rate dropped another 1/4 point, so it's 3/4 point within the last 2 months. And that's going to play an interesting part in where we go as far as real estate's concerned, because I think this is an awkward time. It's awkward to discuss because there's such division of a lot of things, and just who's supposed to be where and what, and it's hard to navigate because we just don't know how everything will play out. But it is what it is, and I hope everybody is. It seems like it's either people are seriously enjoying this or seriously not enjoying this.
Yeah.
There's two very distinct sides to the equation, but again, there is going to be somebody else in the White House come January 6th this year. So what is that going to mean for you guys? What does it look like for the real estate markets? Because we're going to have a change, and what that change is going to bring, I'm sure. You're getting compliments, Terry.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. But anyway, so what's going to happen? Let's get started with a couple of questions. Obviously, Kerry did some deep dives and see what I do think is going to happen, and what there's someone now. Oh yeah. What's going to happen with this real estate market? Hi Dom, how are you? Dom is a new agent in the office. We welcome him aboard. It's an exciting time, and I think we'll be looking forward to. I'm going to be looking at you guys on TikTok from here, so I will be able to answer questions we cannot see.
Yeah. Sweet.
We're a little bit on the blind side.
Yeah. Yes, we are.
Yeah, we're not. We're optically challenged.
Yeah.
I have my glasses, and I just can't see them. But we're going to be seeing it in a second, because I'm going to pull this up on Prodigy's page, because we need to see it already. And it's always fun to watch me in delay, which is when will the interest rates go down? So this is a good question. Let's get into that. Will the interest rates go down? let's stop with this nonsense, guys. Keep like the comments pleasant, please. I don't wanna. This is a serious matter. So what's this? We're talking about what's going to happen after the election to the real estate market and to markets in general. Obviously, there's been a sense of exuberance this week with the markets. Is it long wind? Is it short? That's something that will play out over the next couple of months, and I don't think that it's going to kind of be a steady incline. There's going to be a lot of things between now and January that I think will be in news cycles. There's a lot of things that are happening at once. So while I do think that the sense of exuberance in the markets, which is a good indicator of public sentiment, is going to play a role. But the one question I do want to answer is what does it mean for your real estate interest rates? I believe overall we will see a downward trajectory from here on out. I think what had happened with the interest rate rising over the last, and guys, I don't want to get there was a lot of uncertainty about where markets, so the 10-year treasury, which runs real estate interest rates, basically the 30-year, they're based on the 10-year. The 30-year interest rate is based on the 10-year treasury. So what happens is, and whether they really say it or not, it's an international market for treasuries, meaning people willing to purchase debt of the United States. And that's really what a 10-year treasury is. It's the government issuing debt and whether people feel secure in that debt or not. And I do think what happened here is when we saw interest rates rise, even though the Fed fund rate declined, we've seen like an inverse relationship, which is not common, has a lot to do with uncertainty. So I think with the elections coming up, a lot of people felt uncertainty about how those results would play out. And now that we seem to have kind of, basically, I would say this is calmingly, so far, been calm in terms of like any type of strife or anything that's really kind of like not seen to like, not many protests, not many, there's some things, but it's not, it's pretty handily kind of in one direction. And we're going to avoid naming names or talking about that as being anything we're going to be doing. So, anyway,
I honestly can't even read it.
So, anyway, what does it mean? I do think that the exuberance of the Wall Street is going to extend into real estate now. One of the things that you will see a perk up is, I think, inventory. People will now begin the process of considering putting their house on the market again. Now that things, excuse the sirens, we are close to Highland Boulevard over here, so we get, and the fire station.
Yeah, we're right by the fire.
You should know all about that. I'm always teasing.
Yes.
I gotta do something.
No.
You gotta get viewership. Anyway, so what it is, basically, we're going to see, I think we're going to see some exuberance back into the real estate market again. It'll be tempered because I still don't think the overall economy is actually extremely healthy. So what's going to happen is basically, we're going to see a pretty steady increase in activity. And that's going to be on the listing side. It's going to be on the sales side for sure. It's going to be kind of an unusual winter because of that. And I do think because the waters have kind of set themselves correctly. It was part of the problem of why 10-year treasuries were selling off because of uncertainty is no longer the case. We've gotten the uncertainty part of the markets kind of under, because we already have a trajectory, we know where things are going, which calms the international market, especially the treasuries, and that's going to bring more buyers into treasuries now because of the climate of the politics of this, which was They don't say this on the news, and I will say it, that a lot of the rise in 10-year treasuries had to do with uncertainty about this particular matter, which is what the election, where we were going to go, how it was going to impact us, and was it going to be a normal transition, all these types of things. And I think those were playing on the 10-year treasury. You will see over the next several months, treasuries really start to dip down. So I think we're going into a period of time. I would be surprised if treasuries go back down to about, they start coming on the 4, I think in the next, on the 4% in the next, maybe in the next 2 weeks. The next 2 to 3 weeks is my projection, looking at everything. So 2 to 3 weeks out, treasuries will start to dip below 4%, which means mortgage rates are going to coincide with that. So I do think there's going to be improvement there. There are other things in the thing, but I don't want to need to do all the talking. Harry, what do you have there?
No, I have here that from a source, it says the Federal Reserve is expected to cut interest rates by another 25 basis points, which could affect mortgage rates and borrowing costs.
Yeah. So one of the things that this will do is is the half a point, the quarter point drop, which is 3/4 points in the last 2 months, is basically going to, that has more an immediate impact on credit cards. Okay, so for those people with credit card rates, usually it's maybe a point above prime if you have good credit. So there's going to be some easing in terms of your payments on credit that's outstanding and variable. So that, in the interim, should help a little bit. I still don't think that, again, while the optimism is high overall for the markets, I do think that it really comes down to the consumer's ability to spend. And I don't think that could happen as quickly as markets kind of are responding now. So it will be a little bit of a uphill travel from here. But I do think, and surprisingly, a year ago, I will say this, I was looking to see if housing prices would come down. And this is one of the things that are going to, I'm sure people who are out there looking to purchase, they're like, our price is going to come down. It doesn't appear to be the case at this point. I think we've kind of settled into a number that there's just the inventory levels that were projected out have never really materialized to the degree that I even thought was going to take place. So I do think, I work in logistics. We want to spend most of today in meetings to prepare for tariffs. Very scary. Okay. That's a question that was asked. That's a TikTok follower, and that's a good question. Tariffs. Okay, I don't know if we're doing that much, but when we talk about, guys, there's a lot of things we understand, and I don't want to get into the impact of what tariffs mean for America. There are so many key elements to where this goes, and I don't think that's settled. I think what happens is, from a political standpoint, from both sides, whether we agree or disagree, I think a lot of things are said for the purposes of, look, there's clickbait stuff, and both camps do this. And what happens is, whether tariffs are going to take hold the way people have said it's going to take hold, look, fear is a way of getting people to move. So one of the things is, when they kind of announce tariffs and things like that, how that impacts, and we're going to get this back to real estate in a second, but yeah, it can impact prices. Logistics, if you're in logistics, I think the whole thing is like, does it impact you? Obviously, you're going to be the first one to see it. It's going to really come down to demand side push. If there's no demand, the market will set the price either way. I think we get kind of caught up in the idea that tariffs are going to raise price. Yes, it can, but this is going to play out in different ways, and I think there's going to be some buttons that are going to be pushed, right? And they're going to change the market dynamics to say, okay, it's going to affect demand. So if there's no demand, I don't think, and that's the free market system to be certain of. If you do add a regulation or you add something to it, it raises the cost. And the tariffs do it? Maybe, but I do think that some of that is a little bit of what I call, having been in that arena before, on a different part of my life. These are things that kind of set the news cycle, so it sounds very good. It sounds kind of good, but is it really going to happen in the way that they say it's going to happen? I'm sure there'll be negotiations about tariffs moving forward. I would not fret about it. And I think there are people who are, there's a lot of alarmist stuff that I see, and it's, I don't think it plays out the way most people believe it's going to play out, because again, in politics, it's always the clickbaity stuff that says, "Oh, we're going to do this," and it's in this drastic thing, and it gets people to watch. And I hate to say this, I think people they kind of get thrust into the emotional side of what they're hearing, and then this will taper itself down. I can assure you of that. I don't think. All I know is mortgage rates are staying high for years. I don't. When we say high, guys, this is not really high. Prices. This is the optimal scenario for markets and what's going to happen. I just want to. There's so much about this. What has happened? Okay, so what's going to happen over the next few years? What I project is going to happen based on the data and how things have moved, and whether the economy is going in the right direction or wrong direction. Look, there's going to be inflation. And the question is, what really the Fed is trying to do is it's going to manage inflation to the degree that eventually incomes will rise slowly over the next course of 2 years to start matching what's going on, okay? So I think right now it's the shock factor of interest rates. What's going to happen, and the optimal scenario is, and I do think to some degree that's been achieved here, because there wasn't a big collapse, which a lot of people were fearing about interest rate hikes, right? And I think what we're looking at is, in terms of what it means, is there's going to be, I do think that wages will begin their ascent and start catching up to what the plurality of the market. So, okay, her shaking her head, yes, she wants a raise next year. Going into the but anyway, they'll catch up. It just takes a little bit of time to kind of let the market peter into this. It doesn't happen overnight, but I do think the trajectory, yes, they're going to be high. They're going to be higher than we're not going back to the 3.5s. I think, guys, you're dreaming of this. Because if it does go into the 3.5s, the type of, then you get back into an inflationary situation. And I don't think that's something anybody really wants to see. I just think at a certain point here, they want to see the markets kind of gradually increase. You'll start to see that over time. But this is a while to shake out. This is not going to happen overnight. I don't think that it's going to be an overnight scenario, but I do think for the most part we enjoyed a relatively, as bad as this may seem, and it's bad, don't get me wrong, this is 2008, and that's bad. That's a deflationary market. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people are like, oh, raise rates even higher. I don't think people, they think they know what they're talking about, they don't. It comes with an extremely, high cost to the people who expect lower inflation. I know people want lower inflation, but the consequence of really drastically lowering inflation quickly is you have to have demand side drop, which means unemployment, which means those things. This is not, and that's not political, that's science, that's down to math. And regardless of how I feel about any particular person, or you feel about a particular person, it really comes down to the economics of things, and the economics suggest that as much as people want to see, I don't see your grocery bill. There was all these promises about lowering grocery costs. Yeah. This is it's outrageous on both counts, because again, the market system will determine that. If there's no demand side push for groceries, then it'll drop. So prices will come down if there's no demand side push. it will change over time. It's not going to happen overnight. So I do think that housing will start to become slightly, so what I expect is wage growth to increase, maybe slightly ahead of actually housing inflation. And I want to stick to housing. I'm not going to talk about groceries. Housing inflation being the key factor here, or housing cost. As we progress through this next couple of years, I do think what will happen is we've stabilized things to the point where we'll see some wage growth over a slower period of time, and we'll start to see housing start to thaw as far as like the low inventory situations where people can't move out as people's incomes start to increase over time. We can argue about how things have gone. I don't think that from the standpoint is that hopefully we look back at this period of time in history and we say we managed this pretty well. Because I do think that overall, regardless of political affiliation, because I can care less when I talk about statistics, this wasn't managed horribly. Not great. A lot of things with the knee jerking. I do think if the Fed didn't cut the rate 0.5%, there's some banks out there, there's some systemic things in the market that we have to pay attention to. But it is going to calm, and I do think, well, bread may be $10 a loaf soon. Your incomes will increase over the period of the next 2 years over this, and that's the balance that we're trying to achieve. So everything's going to look like it's more just like we looked at things in 1970 when people made an average of 16,000. The numbers are just numbers, so you can just keep it. So I mean, yes, bread's going to go up, but eventually your salary should catch up with that. That's really the mission, I think, here. And I do think to a large degree, this could have been a lot worse. I really felt at certain periods last year, at a certain time, that we could have gotten into a deflationary situation. And as much as people would love lower prices, guys, that means that demand is so low that you have to lose jobs. People would be economically deprived. So I don't want to really say to somebody, hey, it's the prices are gone great. Yes, and I think it's a consequence of a lot of mismanagement and other things. I think it has a lot to do with, COVID spending, and a lot to do with a lot of spending, period. And that's something that really has to be looked at, and the balance needs to be struck there as well. There are things moving forward that we have to. This is a very challenging environment as far as economically, because of the level of stimulus that's been introduced into markets and how that plays out. There's going to be a lot of things, and I think that's beyond our capability to right now comprehend. But let's talk over the span of the next 6 to 8 months. You're going to see a thawing of the real estate market, which has been basically frozen. And I do think that people may be more willing now that there's more certainty in the environment. Just the environment is more certain about where things are going, provided nothing happens in this world. Who the hell knows? Because I can't tell you. But it's really at a point where we need to really say to ourselves, where we're going from here is I do think there's an upward trajectory as people, and we talk to people every day. So at the street level, one of the biggest problems with inventory at the street level was people were literally not putting their house on the market because of the election.
Yeah.
They weren't certain. And now that I think people have really we've gotten past that point, there should be some thawing in the market. The question really becomes is do we become overly exuberant? Because if there is a flush of inventory that comes about from this, you can still see the prices decline. I think prices pretty much in Staten Island, Brooklyn, Manhattan, they did not do well this year. I mean, Staten Island's done better than most of the other boroughs. The suburbs have definitely accelerated past the cities for numerous reasons. Again, that's not to say what's going on in major cities compared to the suburbs, but people have left after COVID, basically left cities and boosted the markets in suburbia. But I do think that, with that being said, There's still a thrust to move into these markets, and we'll have to see how much of the inventory kind of spikes up in regards to. So why I tell people they try to time this out the right way. There are no real true winners in real estate if you're moving to a different house. I hate to say this, you try to time these things. We get into this debate all the time. You got to deal with homeowners. It's like, when's the right time to sell? But that's where we're at. Do you guys have any questions there?
There's been a lot of.
Go ahead. Yeah, God, goodness, we are just ripping through the questions.
No, there's a lot.
It's not the same house with $60K and it's 20. Yeah, look, this is. These are tough questions because, yes, listen, I've lived through the 70s. I've been around for a while, believe it or not. So this is a question that was posed. It's not the 1970s where houses were $60K, it's 2024. It will only get higher, and that's how it works. Everything's going to get higher. So, yes, the average wage in 1970, the biggest thing that people do complain about, and it's completely understandable, and it's definitely, the biggest problem with housing affordability, okay, and this is, I'll let people on bridge this topic, is the advent of programmatic or structural spending by artificial means, okay, is driving up the cost of housing. So, meaning as qualifications in 1970 were far different than they are now. So when you create a demand side push based on qualifications, let's not talk politics because this is basic fundamental economics. As we have FHA, we have different programs, we have lower down payments. What that does structurally, it creates a demand side push, which is why, so the biggest gap between 2024 and 1970 has to do with the fact that there's more people in the market for housing based on stimulus. To be honest with you, the stimulus affects. So stimulus can be done in two ways. It doesn't necessarily mean injecting money. It means lowering qualifications as well. I think people think stimulus, okay, to stimulate the economy, which, there was a proposal for a $25,000 first-time homebuyer tax, which fundamentally is structurally unsound. You can't just throw $25,000 at it and say it's going to be more affordable. It doesn't work that way. And I'll give you an example of why it wouldn't work that way, because there's been this type of stimulus before. People think that the $25,000 stimulus for first-time homebuyers is something new. This was done in 2009. And I'll tell you what happened in that environment when you do that type of stuff. There are times when it's necessary and there's times when it's unnecessary. And I will get into that in a second because we have a barometer on this from the past that you could apply now to say what would happen if that was introduced. So we don't need any more stimulus into housing to keep prices affordable. We need to look for more structural changes to maybe some of the other things that may be stimulating or overstimulating what is creating the housing prices to accelerate. Maybe it was 2 times the wage back in 1970 to now it's being 8 times. That's significant. But that's not necessarily anything to do with the fact that it's stimulated the economy that really makes it what it is. And that's not only giving money, that's also qualifications. More people have housing available to them, even though it costs more, based on their credit and criteria than ever before. These programs, if you knew how hard it was to get a loan for a house, just the way that's a very complicated, I probably spent 3 hours on that, and Freddie has to go to dinner. Lord knows it's a great topic, but that's you really have to get into the structural reasons why that happens. I know about them, I've read about them, I've studied them, and there's a lot of reasons for it. But let's not get into that. I'm getting long-winded into this because there's a question that was posed. and I can tend to swim around and just ramble. Carrie's not good at reeling me in, hitting me with a bat and say, Anthony, shut up, let me get to the next question.
No.
So what else do we got going on? People tend to think people tend to think their house will go down or up due to elections, but it's not true. No, it is true. Because it's a supply and demand situation, right? So yes, if people are fearful, people will they're going to respond. All economics is emotional. I hate to say this. Every decision that most, especially American consumers make, is based on the emotion. So the same doesn't play a role. It absolutely plays a role. And if people are feeling good about the economy, they're feeling good about spending money, and it's going to create demand. And that's as simply put. But anyway. Yeah. The rest of it. I need to buy a house, and you guys, I want to go through Carrie. It's not Carrie, it's Carrie. Carrie's not licensed.
I'm not an agent, guys.
Yes. Anyway. What else we got going on, Carrie?
Yeah, so I did have some questions
Yes,
for you.
go ahead.
But I do feel like you answered a lot of them.
My long-winded.
Yeah. So
I'll keep my eye on the time, but don't worry.
No.
I won't run you past your dinner time.
no.
We'll apologize to your SO. If we run you behind. She's getting red. I can make her red. That's one of my buttons that I have here. Turn Carrie red. She's already losing her composure.
I'm not good at those. I know, is it getting
let me cool you down.
So I guess one of the questions I have here for you is, in what ways could a high interest rate environment impact housing affordability and the demand for mortgages?
As far as in this, based on the current climate, there's going to be two factors in the next 6 months that what we need to look out for. Okay, there's going to be so for the people that are selling, you better pay attention now, because I do think what you're going to get is a bounce upward, but you're going to get a tempered environment soon after. Because what's going to happen, like I said, the 10-year Treasury, which is the debt instrument for the country, was uncertain because of the election. We got past that. What's happened, why rates have fallen recently, and they were still going up, even though the Fed cut the rates and all that stuff, is there's more certainty in the environment of the political climate. So that's been established, and there's a baseline now. So people are more confident in the fact that purchasing a treasury, it's all about risk, right? Is less risky. So they will go back to buying them as a means of, now. So what's going to happen over the next 6 weeks? Barring anything else, everything moving along swimmingly, knock on wood, is that does it persist? What it's going to do is the next 6 to 8 weeks, you're going to see mortgage rates come down quite a bit because the certainty has been established. But there is still an affordability issue that's not going to allow the market to accelerate way beyond what maybe sellers would expect or want. But here's the thing. There's a pent-up idea of moving. I mean, there are sellers out there willing to do it. It's when. And when it happens, what'll happen at that moment is you'll get a spike up and you'll get an initial burst, and then people's wages are still not up to par with where affordability is still an issue. So you may get what I call a bounce, and then hopefully a subtle slowing, because we're just not there. This is not something that happens overnight. and this is how, if you're probably from a different country watching this, and we do get people who watch internationally, we're exuberant kind of folks. We have some agents here who are new to the country,
Yes.
and like you listen to them, and sometimes they say, in the United States, you guys are a little crazy.
Yeah.
And I don't disagree at times. So we act on emotion quite a lot. So, and our spending habits are based on them quite a lot. We really will see that initial bounce, and we'll see people obviously watch prices excel. Prices are going to come up a bit. I'm not going to tell you the stock market's a good stock market. It moves faster, quicker. So like you'll get to see where the markets go based on that. I've talked about Bitcoin. Bitcoin has been one of the best barometers for the health of real estate market for a while now, because it's not because it's when there's positivity and people feel more confident in riskier assets, which Bitcoin is traditionally considered riskier. The appetite of the American public seems to align with that philosophy. So you will see an uptick in real estate prices, I think, in the next few months as things temper down. But I still don't think the underlying factors of housing affordability will be solved immediately. So that it'll kind of look like this. It's going to look like this, okay? It's going to look like a hill and then like a slope. And that doesn't have this. I'm talking about volume of sales now. So we can see a bump up and then a pull back a little bit. I think maybe over the next 12 months going into next year. But I do think, depending on how far those rates come, depending if inflation's under control, because one of the things that will happen, and this has been a debate with the Fed, of course, and we've got to wrap this up after this, is where the Fed decides if housing does bounce up. I think the Fed has positioned itself, regardless of who's in office, and there's been a debate about who controls the Fed. It's been a raging debate. And it's good that I'll be honest with you, it is good that it isn't. People argue that it should be in someone's hands. I don't believe it should be, because it's not good to mix politics with money. It's not worth it in many instances, regardless of how we feel. And I'm not that I agree with everything that's going on here. And I don't. And some of what I see is positioning, and it shouldn't be. But I'm using word salad to describe this as not to get to the point, because I do have one, but I want to keep myself online. So we do have to look at it from the terms of where the Fed positions itself if prices of housing does accelerate in the next several months. And I do believe that that's going to be one of the things looking forward into 2025 we need to pay attention to. Because if it reaccelerates based on exuberance, I don't believe that they're not willing to raise interest rates again in order to head off inflation, if in case, because housing costs being a key metric in the inflation rate. So, and that's where I'll leave it. And it is Friday night, guys. I know we have a lively audience for the most part.
Yeah.
Really lively. Appreciate you tuning in. And I'm sure we'll get into more of this. I think we may extend this next week. There'll be a couple of lives, I think Vic will be on next week to talk about more of this. And I do think that if you're in the selling position now, you're going to have a real pivotal moment. So anyway, we'll look at more of this in detail, maybe like kind of like hone in on one particular thing. But if you are a seller, I think that you're going to experience a little bit of bounce in the next few months. but I do think it's going to take a while. We'll kind of head off this. It's going to look more like a little pop and then a little drop and then a flattening and kind of, hopefully it just goes like this. But there's going to be an initial push based upon, I think I see Wall Street going way beyond its capacity to extend itself as much as it does. And, that's going to be the key to inflation moving forward. So anyway, hopefully you enjoyed your dinner tonight.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be checking in on Monday to make sure it was good.
Yeah, you can.
I know he's a watcher on here.
I don't know if he's watching.
Wave your hand. Send the wavy hand if you are.
Oh, yeah. I don't think he will. I just see his name pop in.
Oh, okay. And you told him not to join in. It's a lie.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, that's what we. Keep your composure, Carrie. But that's what we have for tonight. Have a great Friday night, guys. I hope you found this entertaining. It's probably short-winded for some people. I could go on this topic for a while. So anyway, have a great Friday night, and we'll see you next week. All right? Ciao. Have a great night, guys.
Bye.